Hey there. Today I want to talk about something. I want to talk about the article that I wrote some time ago. And the article is kind of a culmination, at least up until today, up until this point, of my practice routine. It's not a method per se, it's just the routine that I follow. And it's based on 2 minutes. So I titled, this is the article. I'm going to go through main points of it today and just kind of announce, and then eventually, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to make separate video for each one of these subjects that I talk about in the article. The article is titled 2 Minutes Practice Method. Master the instrument 2 minutes at a time. Now, if I was selling you an actual product and you saw the ad or something that started with this, you'd say, forget it. This is BS. Some kind of a clickbait. Can be true. Well, except it kind of is true. And I just want to hopefully help somebody, motivate somebody, get somebody on a path of creating habit of practice, daily practice, because I believe that's number one. That's number one reason that people quit the instrument, or they're not getting better at the instrument at the rate that they were hoping for. And it's all about sitting down every day to play our instrument. And that's how these 2 minutes started for me, in a way, because I've been playing guitar for most of my life. I started at about age 12, I think. And while I was always, let's say, decent guitar player, I never really achieved the level that I wanted to be at, never achieved the level of people that I admired, my idols, never got even close, in my opinion, to the level that they're at. And a lot of people, including my friends and my wife, say that I am my own worst critic. So there's some of that too. But I think that's also a good motivator. And so what happened some years ago, I wanted to change that. I wanted to start practicing guitar every day. And I gave myself a goal of 1 hour a day. And fairly soon, I realized that that was not feasible, that was not sustainable. Also, truth be told, back then, I was working a lot. I was working 50, 60 hour weeks. So truly, there wasn't a whole lot of time left in a day to practice guitar for an hour every day. Well, then, when I realized that that was not going to be the case, I somehow came up with 2 minutes every day. And I said, well, if I don't have an hour every day, I'll put in 2 minutes every day. And that started just kind of as my morale booster. I wasn't getting myself down after I haven't picked up guitar in like a couple of weeks. And I that's what happened. I started playing guitar. If I realized that my actual practice was not going to happen that day, I would just pick up guitar, play something for 2 minutes right before sleep, and go to bed. And I want to point out, that's what I'm pointing out in this article, that 2 minutes there's nothing new or original about that. It's happened. There's a book that's called Practice of Practice. Great book. It's sitting right there. That's the book Practice of Practice. I refer to it often. Great book, written by John Harnon, who's a friend, extremely well researched, and there's a part in it that talks about how this famous classical teacher designed a 2 minutes a day practice routine for one of his students. And this student, she was a busy performing artist, and she just didn't have time to dedicate to a whole lot of time a day to dedicate to learning this new piece. And he designed 2 minutes a day practice routine for her to learn this. And she did learn it in working on it just 2 minutes a day. And then I just learned fairly recently that there is a book called Atomic Habits. And at the time I wrote this article, it was the best-selling book on Amazon. I haven't read it. But one thing I found out is that part of that book talks about when you want to form a new habit, you do it just for 2 minutes a day, just in order to form a habit and build on that. So I started just like that. I started with 2 minutes a day to form a habit, and at first it ended up being a morale booster. Like I wasn't feeling down and depressed if I didn't play guitar for several days or even sometimes several weeks. Then what happened is shortly after that, sometime after that, I realized that 2 minutes is actually very extremely effective tool when you create a micro focus. And also, it before that it became like a guerrilla practice for me, because I would just jump whenever I realized I had a couple of minutes to spare. I would just grab my guitar, play something, put on a 2 minute timer, play something, and set it back down on a stand and move on with whatever I needed to do. But then I realized that 2 minutes is actually extremely effective tool to woodshed something if you create a micro practice that you can cover in 2 minutes. So that's another small chapter, let's say, in this article that says it's the effective practice tool. And if you are working on a very small chunk of music, say just a bar, just like some difficult passage that you want to practice that consists of bar, maybe a few bars, at times for me even 3 notes, literally 3 notes at a time, then what happens is you have time within 2 minutes frame. You have time for a whole lot of repetitions. You end up doing like 30-40 repetitions. So it's actually very effective practice tool. And then the next chapter is the problem fixer, and that kind of builds on this idea of effective practice tool, because stuff that I played prior to this routine or method and never kind of got it under my fingers 100% completely. Once I started incorporating this 2 minutes woodshed, when I was trying to practice and clean up some of these parts, they became a whole lot better after repeating things for 2 minutes at a time. The next one is that you have to use an actual timer. At least for me, that's the case. Because prior to that, I would wander off a lot. I'd start working on something. Before I know it, I wandered off. Whatever that might be. I wasn't staying on the task. When I started using the timer, I started staying on the task. So timer is like a teacher watching over you. Just keeps you on a task. The next one is importance of focus. So getting in focus and staying focused is extremely important when it comes to music practice. Kind of like being focused versus just noodling. That's the next one I'm going to talk about in the future. The next, the one following that is how to get the most from my practice time. I often talk to friends who are also trying to get better, and that topic comes up all the time. Like, okay, I practice, but I really want to be effective in my practice. I want to know that I'm getting the most out of my practice time. I have my ideas about that. Obviously, I wouldn't be making this video otherwise, so I'm going to talk about that. Then we talk about target tempo. When you try to learn a piece of music, or when you try to improvise over a piece of music, and so on. It's important to select your target tempo, whether that's even if you feel that's too slow, that's okay. Music can sound good even if played slowly or slower that you think might be the case. The next one is breaking. I named it breaking the speed of sound ceiling. So that talks about this problem that people feel that they can never play something fast enough. So I talk about that and how I think you can overcome that issue. The next one is tone, and that's huge. That's one of the most important subjects in any instrument playing. Tone. Tone is the king, really, truly. Tone is the king. And I talk about that a little bit. The next one is titled I'll Never Be As Good, insert the name, plus I'm too old to get better. So I talk about these, what I believe are just like misconceptions, fallacies. Am I using that word correctly? I hope I am. Then, just one example, Wes Montgomery, right, widely considered as one of the best, according to many, the best jazz guitar improviser that ever emerged. Well, he started playing guitar at 19 or 20 years old. Well, for example, in classical circles, that's way too old. That's considered being, if you start at that age, it's considered impossible to turn your instrument playing into a professional career. So, talk about that a little bit. The next is the woodshed. And I think it mostly talks about goals and expectations and the difference between those two. And the expectation can be a trap, but a goal can be extremely good motivator. And it's important to separate these two. And then I say, is this a proven method that works? And my true point of writing that is that ultimately you kind of quote unquote you have to write, again, write quote unquote your own practice method in this world of self-taught DIY musicians. If you're going to music conservatory, you're going to follow that curriculum, and for the most part, majority of people that enter and exit music conservatory or like Berklee School of Music come out as masters. So specific plan and curriculum definitely works, but it's extremely hard to follow unless you are a student and have nothing else going on in your everyday life, and you can dedicate several hours a day, every day, studying, following curriculum, practicing all that. It's extremely, if you just buy somebody's method book, it's extremely hard to stay disciplined to follow a particular method. Also, oftentimes, these method books that you see out there, oftentimes they are actually the result of a lifetime of somebody's music study. And they put it and they put it in the book, and people start going through this book, and after a couple of months realize that they're not really seeing the improvements as much, and they get discouraged. And several more reasons why I believe that eventually, when you are kind of do-it-yourself self-study, even if you have like regular music teacher, eventually at the end of the day, you need to figure out what works for you and then follow that every day, day after day. And that's the key. Every day, music practice, playing your instrument. That's the key. And hopefully this article and what I'm about to hopefully continue talking in the future videos is going to be one small part that'll motivate you to create your own music manual, so to speak. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.